still be impactful and accountable. And so one of the things that I thought was really important is that Dietra also uplifted that nonprofit structure as a vehicle to doing this work. And so we're playing sort of this game about how we think about the expectations and the work, but really it's about this sense of community. And we just have to be realistic about how we do our work together. And then Rory said, the whole system is set up to be these individual itemized one-to-one relationships. And part of the work of philanthropy is to constantly interrogate those mindsets of why we do what we do. But it's not enough to just do that. And it's one thing to undo the status quo, but it's another thing to get into some imagination about what a better world would look like. And as a person from philanthropy, she really uplifted the fact that, philanthropy isn't meant to support movement building, and that we really have to think about the ways that we redistribute resources and try to align the work and think creatively about how we do this together. And then lastly, Adita really talked about shared narratives, and she said that when you're thinking about movement building, that shared narrative should not look like re-traumatizing yourself or your community members just for the sake of getting additional dollars. And I thought that that was just, really important because it's so important to tell the story of our work, but we're not looking at just individual stories. We're looking at the collective impact. And so while a story can uplift an issue, it's really about thinking about it in the ways that we can really think about larger impact and bring light to a specific issue and challenge to create systemic change around that. We also got into a discussion about roles and specifically looking at the social chain ecosystem map, which really thinks about the framework that individuals play. And you all saw yourselves in different roles. And though we won't get too much into this today, this is something we will go back to, particularly as we think about the impact that we have across these different areas of work. So we had breakout groups, and what really resonated most with folks is that there was value alignment within movement building framework, that it was important to center those that are closest to the issue, that we have shared decision making, and that we really try to capitalize on movement building work. Folks said that it was difficult sometimes to stay grounded in the shared values and vision, but that it's important to always kind of go back to what are we trying to do, even though we can get lost in the weeds and in the work and the day-to-day grind, that having those values and vision with your partners is really core. Folks really appreciated the asset building framing instead of thinking about what we're missing, what gaps we have, what challenges we're facing, that we think about the successes that we're having and how we're making movement towards goals. Trust building and connections was an important aspect of relationship building. Really, multiple people appreciated the fact that storytelling doesn't mean exploitation, but also thinking about how do you tell those individual stories that in a way that uplifts the collective impact and the power of the folks on the ground doing the work. Folks also thought that or shared the sense that there was a lot of exhaustion from trying to do this work, and how do you manage all the different moving parts, the day-to-day grind, working with funders, all of these things, that it can be really tiring. But uplifting that we all have a role to play in movement building, and that it really helps us think about the path we're trying to make, the journey that we're on, and the impact we're trying to have. And I don't know if other folks had any thoughts about what resonated with them, if anything's missing from this slide that you felt like we really need to uplift. You can raise your hand if you would like to share, or you can put something in the chat. Or if this is really resonating with you guys can give like a thumbs up, or an emoji. Megan.
Hi, sorry, I'm going to be driving in a bit, so I can't use the chat, but I wanted to say that this really resonates with me. Everything that we do at UTech is highlighting the lived experience and the stories of struggle from our young adults. And we firmly believe in that storytelling is not exploitation. So, yeah, 100%. So I just really agree with this.
Thanks, Megan. Alicia, sorry. Yes.
Oh, no worries. Good morning, everyone. I think for me, that storytelling piece is also resonating, and I don't remember if it was in this meeting or in that meeting or in another meeting. One of the things that has stayed with me is the whole point. Like we always talk about individual stories and how powerful those can be, but I think what the presenter had brought home to me really was the impact of collective stories, right? Because when you're looking at policy systems and environmental change and the power of stories within that, individual stories are great actually, but when you take all those individual stories and you start to look at what's similar and what's different about them, when you're doing PSC work, that's an even more impactful tool to have, because these stories are really getting at the gaps that are existing in spaces. And so that's one thing that has stayed with me.
Thank you, Alicia. And one more comment from Tracy.
Yes, I think that all of those responses from the panel, so inspirational. I really felt that their delivery and their insight to how to actually build movement was so like dynamic and powerful. The one thing I just wanted to just elaborate on is the exhaustion piece. Actually being a Black person doing the work of racial justice, I can't even emphasize the emotional drain sometimes, the vigor and the resilience that is necessary to keep others engaged and to constantly search and look for other ways to be influential, to support the work. The other thing that I would just like to ask those who are experiencing this exhaust, is there a way for us to support each other? Because all these other things mean and they are so powerful. But if the individuals that are doing this work are feeling like they're drained in some way, we need a space or another way for us to actually support each other. Maybe this is the platform for that, but I do feel like there's something extended that needs to happen to support folks who are doing this work, who is actually experiencing exhaustion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Tracy. I think that that's a really important factor to uplift. And I would love if our facilitators for the breakout could actually note that question about how we can support ourselves for the breakout questions. There's the last question about what can we do as the funds. And if you guys can note that including that in the conversation so that we can bring it back into the group. So thank you so much, Tracy. So some of the questions that we saw that folks still have is, how do we stay grounded in this work? Again, it can be challenging to manage all of the different moving parts, but we really want to focus on the mission and vision, what we're trying to do, and how do we continue to return to what we're trying, sorry, how do we continue to like align our day-to-day with the long-term goals of the work? And how do you take leadership along with you on the journey? That seemed to come up with folks in their conversations it could be leadership within your organization or within the community, but also related to political figures. How do you get those to come along and to support this type of work? There were a few points about the role of municipalities in movement building. They maybe don't share the same values, but they're important partners. So there's a clear tension there. So what is the role that municipalities play in this? How do we continue to sustain the movement, and how do we create effective narratives, which I think was just uplifted in our conversation on the previous slide. And if there are other questions that you feel like we're still circling around, please put those in the chat, things that you're still thinking about. Because it's not necessarily that we're going to answer those today, but we definitely want to be able to come back to those and reflect on those and try to answer those as much as we can throughout this year. So please do put those questions you're still thinking about in the chat. And for my colleagues that are looking at the chat, is there anything to uplift?
Not as of yet.
Okay, thank you. So let's dig into talking more about movement building and the funds. I'm just going to go to this slide first. So they're accidentally out of order, so I apologize for that. So one of the things that we like to look at ourselves is we are a partnership, right? With clear goals, mission, and a vision for this work. I think that in looking at this approach, we talked about this in the annual meeting. It's how do we move from being just transactional to being transformational? But as we uplifted, some of the challenges with specific types of partnerships can make it challenging to move across these columns. But I think it's an opportunity for us to really organize our partnerships, think about where we are in, sharing values, where we are in our relationship building, where we are in the moment of time, to try to see where we can move along. And I think this is an important part of building trust and connections and that relationship building component, because you have to meet people where they are in this moment, and you also have to decide if these are going to be like the tight, close-knit community of partners that you're working with, or if these are going to be people you bring in at certain points. And I think that this is where I said that Carolyn had a really interesting component to this that I think we can use to help shape our work and connecting movement building to the funds, because we are a partnership. We have these clear goals, but we understand that not everyone is doing direct grassroots organizing work, although we support coalition building, community building, and developing our community residents, that it's not that folks can do that as easily based on the parameters that they're in. So I think Carolyn offered a really interesting thought here that I'll have us sharing. Is the sound, let me know if the sound is not good for this.
Pull out some themes. So, Homestrong, Massachusetts, we are connected to a national formation called the Right to the City Alliance.
Sound is good.
Through that, all of our groups commit to certain values and principles, right? About how we, to Deidre's point, right? How we show up together, and also like what we're committed to moving in our communities. And that's critical, right? That those shared values and practices are like what create a space to do movement building. And it's hard, right? We all know it's hard. There's so much. It's easy to say we have shared values, and it's hard to like live in that. But we really commit to that, right? Our core, we share values and principles. I can put some of them in the chat, which are both about, again, how we do the work and what our vision is for the system we're trying to build. But we also know that we are on a path toward a different system, and we live in the belly of the beast, and we have to, like, we need to deliver for our people right
Sorry.
now, right? That there's immediate things that folks are dealing with. And so we build alliances with other partners who maybe don't share, right, all those values with us, but we understand the difference in the kinds of partnerships we're building, right? So we have our core, that 12 organizations that have committed to this shared work. And then for certain campaigns, we'll build out like a rent stabilization space that's really broad. And like the shared vision and value there is, are you down to organize around this policy over the next 2 years, right? And so in that space, we welcome everyone who wants to do that. We try to bring our visions and values into the space, but we're clear on how we're moving people toward it. We don't expect everyone to be there right away. I think the more there's clarity on the shared values and how you're moving in different spaces, the more you can, get a, like, kind of deal with some of the tension. But I think it is about meeting people where they're at, but also really like having a core group that has shared values and is moving together, and is building, is trying to bring people into that. And
So thank you, Carolyn. So I think that really brings the point around about sometimes relationships are transactional, but you have to have those core relationships at the center of the work that are really trying to be transformational. And so I think with that context in mind, let's get into more specifics about the funds themselves and how we're seeing movement building connecting. Again, we're doing this work together, we're learning together about this, and we are open to hearing your input and thoughts on this. So we're not talking about evaluation today, but these are the questions that really guide the work that we are doing. And I think they're important because this is the ways that we are thinking about how we have impact. And so some of the overarching questions are related to how are the funds furthering equity in mass, and how are the funds creating, strengthening, and or leveraging foundational conditions to further equity. So what is that big picture impact, and how are the funds creating more mechanisms for you to reach the goals that you're trying to do in your projects? There's also some process questions related to the key activities that folks are implementing, and to what extent they're able to develop those initiatives as they've planned. So you guys lay out a work plan, the things that you want to do. How effective are you able to do that? And how does the funds enable or perhaps or create more challenges into creating that work? And so we want to think about that. And then just lastly, how are we continuing to innovate and improve the process used in the distribution and evaluation of the fund? So HRA team is really important in this because a lot of this work is what the funds itself is doing as a collective, and then what our team is trying to do. So we're also trying to think about how do we continue to improve the systems. How are we evolving to changing times, to different things that are happening, perhaps politically within your programs, et cetera, to really be adaptive and to improve the work of the funds. So this is just like ground us in thinking, but we're going to talk more specifically about the mission, values, and vision of the funds. So you guys all know the vision. I hope you do. And so through contributions to equitable systems across sectors, and the explicit prioritization of people of color and older adults, the funds envisions communities that are transformed so that all residents have an equitable opportunity to have the highest quality of life possible. So we see here that we're really focusing on creating equitable outcomes for people in Massachusetts, that we're trying to center folks that are most impacted by key social determinants of health. And that's what we see as the bigger picture in our vision. But within our mission, we have the work of the funds and then the work of the funds team. So the funds themselves, so through distribution of our resources, we hope to disrupt and remove barriers to health by investing in community-centered innovative change approaches, targeting the root causes of inequitable health outcomes. And so when I say like the distribution of the funds, I mean not just the dollars, but also the technical assistance, these learning communities, the one-on-one approach, the evaluation support that folks get. These are the things that we're trying to provide that hopefully disrupt and remove the barriers to you doing the work that you're doing, and therefore hopefully creating more capacity for movement building. And then the team, so that's, you know, me and my colleagues, the folks that are supporting you. We want to convene and engage grantees and community stakeholders through equitable grant making evaluation practices. So the ways that we implement all of our components, we try to do in an equitable fashion. And so this is at the service of challenging unjust systems and strengthening capacity to advance health and racial equity in Mass. And so we see ourselves as a mechanism to disrupt that change, right? As part of the larger system. But we're also working like in this broader partnership where we may have to navigate different challenges, right? So I just want to be clear that there's the mission of the funds, and then there's a mission of the team as a component. Is this making sense to folks? Just trying to see. Okay, I'm gonna keep going, but please, questions in the chat. And so then we also have values for the team. That is leaderful, strategic, and intentional, bold, innovative, and ambitious, community-centered, accountable, and to learn and grow together, which is something that we're doing right now. We're learning and growing together. And so just to kind of articulate what these are trying to say. For leaderful and strategic, we really want to make sure that we're utilizing the strengths of the team in a strategic way so that we are efficient and effective. We want to be innovative. We want to think outside of the box. We want to be creative. And our team is really committed to anti-racism practices, to challenging bureaucratic systems, and to push you all to improve and do the work that you're doing, as well as hopefully leaders within the partnership. And so we know community-centered, that the funds is really trying to uplift expertise and support collaboration, and hopefully the resources of the team is helping to promote more greater community engagement in this work. We also want to think about accountability, specifically calling out white supremacy culture and getting consistent feedback, and then learn and grow together, that we are open, that we want to practice equitable approaches, that we want to bring passion and joy to this work, and also know that we don't know all things, and that we are open to being reflective and enhancing this work. So our theory of change, I know this seems like a very daunting slide, but we're really going to focus on the strategies for today. But the theory of change is really thinking about how our key components of the funds help us to get to those longer term outcomes, which include improving, creating equity, improving the lives of individuals that have the opportunity to live a healthier life, and to increase racial equity in Massachusetts. So those are the long-term goals. Those are the things that we outline in our vision, right? And so today we're going to focus on the key components of the strategies, right? And this is just pulling out the strategies. But what I want you to really pay attention to, because there's a question in the breakout related to this, is which components are you doing in your work? So we all should be doing moving towards PSE change. We also should be thinking about community engagement. And some of these things are broader because these are the theory of change for the fund. So the role that the funds is playing in trying to get to our vision. And so you'll see things like multi-year investments, equitable trust building, things like that, that maybe feel more like, oh, this is the role of us as the grant maker, right? But this impacts your work. So I want you to think about how these key components help you to be able to be more successful in your work. So before we go into the breakouts, I just want to leave room for folks that might need additional clarity on anything, on any of the slides that were just presented. Any questions? Folks are clear on our mission, our values, how this connects to movement building. Okay. So again, thinking about us as a partnership, right? And how are we applying movement building to this partnership? We have some questions for you in your breakout. So one, how does the movement building framework support our fund's vision and mission? And you can look at both the mission of the funds itself and the team mission. What values of the funds resonate most with movement building? Are there any values from your work that you feel are missing? So this is really trying to create more components of shared values. This is just a starter conversation on that. But are the values resonating with you? Are there components of the values that our team upholds that we should consider in the ways in which we implement the funds? The third question is, how can the resources of the fund, so the grant dollars, the TA, the capacity building, et cetera, provided, enhance your work, I should say your work, around the fund strategies? So again, how does the resources and the funds as a whole enhance your ability to do community engagement, to do collaboration, to do to focus on equity, all of those things that were in the strategies? And the last question is, what actions can we take as the funds to contribute to movement building efforts? And so this is really to help us dig in to how the funds can really use this framework, the movement building framework, to think about our impact in a different way, to think about the collective nature of our work. And also I want to bring in, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but the person who asked the question earlier about how we can support one another into that fourth question. And
That was
so
me, Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy. Sorry about that. And what actions can the funds take in relation to supporting each other? So I hope that makes sense. So is everyone clear? Okay, so we are doing breakout groups by region again. And so you can join the region that you're in. I'm going to open the breakout rooms in a minute. It's Central, Boston, and statewide, Metro West, North and Northeast. So Alicia, you're in North and Northeast, Southeast, and then there's Western, two Western Mass, because you have a lot of Western Mass grantees. So if you're Berkshire, Franklin County, or Hampshire and Hampden County. So I will open those up. Please select the group that you're in for your region. If you need any help, I will assign you.
Hey everyone. How are you doing?
Morning.
Morning. Can we just spend a few minutes, just do a quick introduction? I can start. My name is Chen Hens. I'm the program associate. I'm sure that you probably have received lots of email from me. Really nice to see everyone here. I'm gonna pass it to Robin.
Hi, are we all gonna go off camera? Okay,
It
I don't
would
know.
be better if we can, if it's not in the right spot and you don't have to.
I'm Robin Tuff from UMass Lowell, and I work with Alicia Miller on the Lawrence chip.
Hi, my name is Rosalina Castro, and I work for the Gloucester Health Department, and I run a bus called Seniors on the Go, and I work with the elderly. And I'm from Gloucester. Am I in the right group? Is this okay? Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Megan. I am the policy manager at UTech, and I'm sorry I'm off camera. I'm actually on my way to the center now. So
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rosa Fernandez. I'm the program director for Health Equity Partnership of North Central Mass. I'm like the Gloucester person. I'm not sure if I'm in the right group, but I do
Yeah,
get a
you're
lot
in
of
the right group.
I do get a lot of emails from you, Chechen. So I think I'm in the right place.
Alicia Miller. Sorry, I'm off camera. My internet is unstable, so to stay in the meeting, I have to stay off camera. Alicia Miller representing the city of Lawrence, and as Robin said, work closely with Robin.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Brochu. I'm the grants manager at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Stoneham and Wakefield.
Good morning, I'm Andrea Baez. I'm the program officer for the Boys and Girls Club of Stoneham and Wakefield. I'm also having unstable internet, so I apologize that my camera is also off.
No worries, no worries. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. So I'm gonna put the questions in the chat. Does anyone want to volunteer taking notes? If nobody's, it's okay. I won't take notes. So the first question we talk about is how does the movement building framework support our fund's vision and mission? Which one you guys want to talk first? You can choose.
Can you say it again? How does the movement?
Yeah, how does a movement building framework support our fund's vision and mission?
I would say the shared values, the shared values kind of makes movement happen, that focus, it's focused, it's shared. And those are my 2 cents. I gotta ponder a little bit longer.
I think it's good that am I on mute? No. I think it's good that we work together and we all get ideas off of each other. And that helps us to do our job better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw somebody.
I think it,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Alicia.
I think it does. It reiterates the premise of inclusion, collaboration, and getting to equity. I mean, moving through the stages, acknowledging that not everybody is starting in the same place. Some people are actually just starting out building their coalition, and so they're really in the transactional stage of things some of us are further along, and some of us have been doing this work for a while and are at the very end, the transformational side of things. And so I think using this framework does acknowledge the fact that we're all starting in different places, but still working towards the same goal, and really brings home the value of collaboration, that we're acknowledging who we are as a people, and how our differences strengthen our base of the work that we're trying to do, and really informs that process. So in that respect, the funds really do allow us to do a little more in that realm of health equity, social justice work.
Thank you, Alicia. I think I saw somebody post it in the chat, was asking a question about how can we build unity among us, people of color. Just want to hear from your perspective, like from your work. Like I think my further question is like, what blocks us to make unity? Because we all talked about like, it would be great to do this work collaboratively. Just want to hear from you guys.
I'll speak for what we've done. We've collaborated with coalitions that support women of color. So like in Massachusetts, there's a Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition that does supporting around 3 pillars, one on economic stability, mental health, and oh shoot, I forgot what's the last one, entrepreneurship, political civic engagement. And so what I enjoy about this coalition is they have mentorship opportunities. So I think we left out like mentorship and coaching along this framework, is given those platforms and those opportunities to the point of the last person who just spoke about she was talking about the support systems and in place, and really doing it in partnership. So just so meeting people with their experiences and where they're at. So sometimes coaching, there's some great models, coaching models, mentorship models that could also be incorporated, I think, along the way. And also, again, partnering with other coalitions or groups that support women, or support people who are doing this work.
Thank you, Rosa. There. Anyone else have thoughts?
Can you repeat the question, Chen? Because I don't know if I'm...
Yeah, I just, someone asked like, how can we build unity among us, people of color?
Oh, okay.
And then my question is like, what are the blocks that you have seen that blocking people from like becoming united together to do this work?
I can hop in here, if that's okay. So my name's Megan. I work with UTech, and as a white woman myself, I find that it's not my job to talk as more as to listen, and then highlight the voices that may, that systematically are oppressed. And in other coalitions that I've been in, it's very easy to kind of get like lost in the work and kind of forget like what the main mission is. So we always, with my work, I always constantly remind myself why I'm here and what I'm doing, what I do. But I think it's easy to kind of forget, like, we're here to uplift those voices, not speak over them. And there's been some dynamics that make it hard for people to kind of learn, and it's not the responsibility of people of color to constantly teach. So it's our responsibility as people doing this work to constantly be learning, but not put that responsibility on the people who are oppressed, if that makes any sense.
I agree with you 100%, Megan. That was super powerful. Thank you for sharing that. You nailed it.
I think another thing is that it might not be a block, but it's something that all people of color do not all think the same. They don't all believe the same thing. They have different opinions, just like, you know, in Lowell, we tend to lump all Southeast Asian people together, but everyone's different and come from different places, and understanding that we're not all thinking alike just because we come from a similar group. Something in common doesn't mean everything in common.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Robin. I have noticed that too as a Chinese immigrant here, and definitely in our group, and people have different opinions. And a lot of times I feel it's just like people don't know or don't think about this in a deeper level. Like I didn't have any idea about racism, systematic racism, until I started working here and learning more from each of you, and then I understand more, and so then I see, yeah, this is really existing. I feel it really takes time to educate people, like what Megan said.
It's also subcultures within culture. I mean, there's that it's not division. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's that distancing based on where you were born and raised, even if you're within the same ethnic grouping. And so we were talking about this recently. Kids who were born here see things very differently from kids who were born in the motherland, see things very differently from parents who were born in the motherland and came here. So even within those cultures, there are distinctions in how people think and how they believe things and what they believe within those cultures as well. And then even thinking of historic differences among races, that also plays into who's asking the question, who's leading the charge, who's making the decisions. All of those things, they're nuanced, but they're present. And so a lot will depend on who gets heard. And so for us, one of the things that we try to do a lot of is look to see who are the leaders within subpopulations and have them do the leading. Because if not, then there is that high risk that you will not be received at all within subgroups.
Thank you, Alicia. This is a really great suggestion. Yeah, we can move to the next question. We all sort of touched a little bit about this. What values of the funds resonate most with movement building? Are there any values from your work that you feel are missing? I think Rosa has shared something in the past, but if anyone else have any thoughts, feel free to share.
I don't remember the list of values, so this is very difficult, so.
I can share here. Mm. Leaderful, strategic and intentional, bold, innovative and ambitious, community-centered, accountable, learn and grow together.
Was inclusive or even equity as part of the values? I mean, being inclusive or through equitable lens or cultural humility lens? I don't know if I heard it, but
Yeah, there's a learn and grow together. I guess the together can be a little inclusive, but it should be more intentionally mentioned.
I guess learning and growing resonates a lot with me. We do this work every day, and so we tend to lose track of what it means in the greater scheme of things. And sometimes we're not even tracking what we're doing because we're so busy doing it. And so when we take our themes or topics to community and we get a very different perspective, it makes us stop and think and appreciate. And it reminds us that, you know, there is value in what we're doing, but there's a lot more value for me in people seeing the same things differently. You know, back home we say you either see it half empty or half full. And it's really how the type of personality you are. But there are experiences that allow us to see things very differently and ask for very different things, even for the same issue. And so that's where the learning comes in. So learning and growing together for me really resonates.
Yeah, I can hop in there. I think with our work, it's really hard to like codify best practices and, you know, even like the wins through our work, it's hard to kind of track them. And having this process has been able to do that for us, but also like reflect to our young adults like their progress as well. So it's been really fun to.
Thank you, Megan. Robin, are you going to say? Okay. Sorry, my cat is jumped on my desk. So I guess when Alicia shared about learning and growing together piece, and Tracy also mentioned about like how can we support each other. I just want to go to the next question. How can we at the funds supporting you and enhance the work that you do?
I can also hop in here. The funds have really helped us branch out, especially in organizing. We now have an organizing educator that helps lay down do in the state house, especially with like learning what our local government looks like and really just breaking it down for our young adults. So we've been really as part of our work now. And thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Are there anything else that we can do to supporting you?
Well, I think HIRA has a great reputation. And so I think that when I wrote leveraging, that's what I was thinking is sometime name recognition and
Hello from beyond. 5 more minutes.
It's kind of scary.
yeah, I was like, oh wait, hold up. So yeah, so I think leverage has played a significant role as well. Just the funding capacity it builds, of course, it's very helpful, but also that there's a trust factor and work ethics and integrity that comes along the way with the funding with the support that we get. Or did I mislead the question? What other support system? I'm sorry. I think I don't know if I got the question. I responded to the right question.
That's okay. I'm just asking to see any other support that we can provide.
I think it's good to have these kinds of things that you host all the time. It's just inspiring to hear what other people are doing.
Thank you, Robin. I had a question. Oh, are there any like innovative grant making process that you have experienced in your past that you want to suggest to us? Just feel free to let us know. We always want to see how can we make this process more equitable. Last question is, what actions can we take as the funds to contribute to movement building efforts? Just think about us as a whole cohort, part of the funds. Rosa, when you said community advisory committee members, do you mean from your community members?
Yeah, like just having community recruiting on a community advisory group to help with your grant funding process, or even to give input in the application, or just it's good to get some input from community members, and it's a way to engage them, but also shifting some of that power, where the community members are making some of those decision making in the grant cycle.
It's a great suggestion. We are recruiting Cycle 3 review committee members and also advisory committee members. So feel free to share with your committee, like community members, and they can be part of it.
Great, thank you.
Welcome. Any other thoughts? No, any comments? We can just go back to the main room. Thank you so much for all your suggestions and comments. See you in the breakout room.
Still waiting for a few folks to join us to come back. 15 seconds. Oh, welcome back, everyone. Seems like you were having good conversations. So let's start our share back. And we will start with the Northeast group. And if you could just share some key themes from your conversation. Do you have a designated
We
sharebacker?
forgot to find someone to share, but I can say a few things that we talked about is we think that collective working this work together, doing this collaboration work, making a bigger impact in this movement building. We also talked about something that we feel are missing, maybe the language of being inclusive, including community members and including more voice in this work. And then we also have talked about that we also give a great suggestion of like inviting community advisory committee members from each organization to help with the decision-making process in grant making so that we can shift the power and how we distribute the funds. Are there anything that people want to add?
Did you guys get a chance to talk about the values?
We did. So we were talking about we really like the value of learning and growing together in the space. So a space like this always help us to learn what other people are doing and inspire our work. Yeah, this is most stuff that we talked about.
Thanks, Chen Chen. Anyone else from the group want to add? Okay, we'll have our Southeast group go.
Hi. So in terms of the vision of the funds and how the funds really support that vision, the general themes from that is that the funding really allows to support and address the barriers in the community. So for example, when we're having meetings or direct service provided to the community, there's opportunity to support transportation, childcare, food was a big thing that came up around that. And that the funds are really flexible and it really allows for that movement building. So for example, Randolph was talking about engaging youth in internships around civic engagement. And it's really youth-led, and the funds allow for that. Sorry, I have a lot of notes. In Brockton, supporting victims of domestic violence and other violence, really seeing that there are people coming from even other states, and they're able to provide services that, you know, otherwise wouldn't be available because the funds are sort of flexible around that, and really supporting what the needs are. And then from our perspective, we've worked on federal funds, and you're not allowed to spend that in certain ways. So for example, stipends, that's a huge thing in engaging the community and making sure that their work is really valued and compensated. And then in terms of movement building, Cape Cod talked about there are really small communities there, and oftentimes those that have the ability to be engaged are retired, wealthy, white homeowners, and really taking a grassroots effort for that movement building into smaller pockets of the community, discussing their needs and issues that they're having, and then bringing those back to town meetings, pushing for bylaws changes, and then bringing that information right back into the community, having those individuals invite their friends, their neighbors, and really building it out that way. And Ella from that same community talked about movement building really being around hospitality, both giving hospitality and accepting it, to build that trust. So food again, coffee, pizza, food.
So can I actually ask you specifically related to any of the strategies that we uplifted? It sounds like the community engagement and collaboration was really uplifted. Were there any other components that you feel like the resources really help you guys to support in your communities?
Yeah, so definitely a big focus on community engagement.
I'll
I'm not
jump
sure.
in. I think it was sort of unrestricted resources that, like, we don't have a lot of like, this must be spent on this and can't be spent on that, that flexibility to like allow communities to use to receive what they want is really important and fills a gap.
Okay, thank you. And do you have any other things you want to say, Lauren? Sorry.
I think just making sure that, something that Christine had talked about is, when we're engaging the community, making sure that we're working with their availability and what's meaningful to them. So don't just say we're meeting every first Tuesday of every month and this is exactly what we need from you, but what is it that's meaningful for you to provide, and when does it work for you to provide that, in terms of movement building, making sure that it's not very prescribed.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And Central.
Magalise, I want to give you an opportunity to share a bit on the first fund's vision and mission.
Okay, well, I think so that the vision is like really in line with the work that we have been trying. Maybe 5 years just to create leadership development among people of all, but also among senior population, because to me, when we talk about building movement, it's something that is really very powerful, because we have the opportunity to bring those voices of the people that don't have a lot of resources. So what I was sharing was my experience with the National Domestic Worker Movement. That's a movement that we start building locally here in Massachusetts. And then we went national with an organization that is now running maybe 50 or 17 organizations that are organizing around domestic workers. So I believe that this is a really good opportunity that we can start building this movement from now, and at the local level. This is really very important that we can bring everybody together, because the grassroots organizing that we have to do is a lot of work. It's something that sometimes we don't have a lot of spaces if we don't have the funding and the capacity. But I believe that the work that we have been doing with this initiative is something that is putting us in the right track. I believe that we can build that movement to bring justice and dignity for all people that don't have that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Magalise. Was there any other things that wasn't
Yes.
said in that group to uplift related to values or how the funds can better support your work?
We
Or-
also talked about, in terms of the values, the being leaderful in leadership, especially thinking about, bringing more voices to the table.
Yes.
Chantel talked about like their work in particular, where they were able to, that those champions that they have, those community members that help them do the work are so valuable, and being able to pay people for their intellectual work, ideas, thoughts, how important that is towards doing the work that they're doing and engaging community. And that, building leadership is just really resonates. And Magalise talked about one thing to add to the value. Magalise, I don't know if you want to just talk about trust.
Yes, I was thinking like building trust is like a real matter that impact the way that we are organized in the community, because sometimes people don't believe in what we do if we don't have been like a working, building relationship with them. So if they don't trust you, nothing is happening. And that's something that is happening also with trying to build partnership, because in order to build the partnership, they have to know us, like they see me in the community working for maybe 10 years, and they say, okay, then we can do something with them. It's like a building trust is really very important to the work that we want to do with partners and with resident people in the community too. And also I was talking about cultural sensitivity. How can we be more sensitive to cultural issues? Because we have different languages, we have people from different nationalities, and we need to be sensitive to the cultural piece. So that's two values that I would like to add is culture and trust. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Boston and statewide group.
Did not assign anyone. Would anyone like to share anything? If not, I'm happy to go. I think we didn't really follow the questions exactly, but we went all over. First, there were some questions about kind of the values and just how we kind of arrived there. So how we arrived at those values. So we talked a little bit about that process. And then I think generally the values were resonating with grantees, with people. We talked a lot about resources and how the funds have helped advance these strategies, and also how they could potentially. So we talked about how, again, I think people talk about the flexibility of the funds has really been helpful to fund a lot of different things that normally isn't funded, like relationship building, like building that trust, which takes a lot of work. And Maggie Lacey also just we're talking about those. So I think that was one aspect that was helpful. But I think there are other ways as well. We talked a little bit about communication. Stephanie, who logged off, mentioned how potentially having, like, she heard this podcast that EOHHS did and around reimagining healthy aging in Massachusetts, and that was really helpful. And so is there anything that we all can do, either as the funds as a collective or grantees, individual grantees can do around like kind of communicating that work and elevating it? So we talked about that. We also talked about like a resource sharing hub, kind of like our Google learning platform that we had previously, but how to, you know, continue kind of that resource sharing, and what is the most effective way to do that as a community of the funds. We also talked about, that's all I can think of so far. Does anyone else want to add anything? Margaret?
Sure, I'll add. I think we talked about the just the different ways that impact can be measured, and sort of like with across different projects and in on different scales. One participant, I forget who, but if they're still on the call, feel free to step in. But one participant shared about like an individual who had like a very positive experience with one of their programs. Nahid, it was you. So if you want to share, feel free. But I shared at least that like with the project that MACDC is using the grant for. It's it's a lot of the work that we're currently doing and have been doing is building capacity and building trust and really trying to let that guide community engagement. And it's like difficult because you can't really evaluate how effective the program is because when you're still in that capacity building, relationship building stage, that's still very necessary. It's hard to see the immediate outcomes of that kind of in process. And yeah, Nahid, if you want to share, go.
So we actually, Nahid, if you can do that quickly, have one more group to do. So go ahead.
I will be very quick. So thank you, Grace. The only thing I want to add to that is basically it's like a circle. You have community engagement, you have funds, you have collective work together, and then comes the impact. And it's important to share as much as difficult the impact, and especially tangible, making it measure tangible impact is, it's important to share those stories.
Thank you, Nahid. And the last group is Western Mass.
Thanks. I'll go ahead and share a little bit on behalf of our group, but I welcome anyone and everyone to chime in if I miss anything or if I don't do justice to the conversation that we had. So we took a step back, I think a little further from the questions and really dove into the ways that our mission is to dismantle a lot of the structures that are in place and how we need to be thinking about spaces differently. So we had a bit of a conversation around how frameworks can feel a bit constricting, and how to be cautious about creating systems that will then need to think about disrupting kind of later and perpetuating that cycle. So how to be able to take what we can from frameworks, but then also build in flexibility and softening some of those lines, so that we can continue to, I don't know the best way, sorry group, so that we can be true to ourselves and our mission of dismantling these systems that have not served us well, but still being able to learn from these spaces. We also really honed in on that concept of preventing exhaustion, taking care of ourselves, and how the funds can support that work. So one aspect that we talked about was about thinking more about the expectations that funders are putting on grantees and how we can step back, and really think more about what makes sense, what we actually need, and where we're still continuing to put undue burden on grantees. But we also really dove in on relationship building in that aspect. I know that's come up already. But thinking about kind of the idea at the end of the funds, what remains, and kind of the two things that were lifted up were relationships with each other, with community, that trust that we've built, and also the policies that we've changed, kind of those enduring systems changes. So thinking about relationship building as kind of an understudied area and something that we can dig into a little bit more, but also something that needs more attention. And I will pause there and open the space for anybody else who can maybe add some clarity or if I missed anything.
And I will say we are almost at closing. So if maybe one person has something to add to what Stephanie shared.
I think most of our group is gone, besides maybe Kalpana. So, and myself. So yeah, you did a great job, Stephanie. And I think for myself, I was sort of reflecting also having been in public health for like 15 or I don't know, maybe 20 years, and how movement building framework has not been a part of my work in institutionalized and state funded public health. And that's, I really appreciate the framework. I think that it helps expand my sense of what we're trying to do beyond just a sort of PSC and targeting social determinants of health, because it's really talking about the way we're doing it. And I think in our group, yeah, as Stephanie said, we kind of even pushed at that, like, okay, so we're in movement, but like in a lot of movements, people are kind of struggling. They're, burning out. We're looking for healing within those movements. That's hard. And how do we have a culture of care and relationship? And I think the funds have been really amazing at being flexible in supporting that, but that's very unusual. Like, it's not easy to get paid to build a culture of care and to foster relationships. That's considered like a step on the way to something better. But what if that was the outcome itself around resilient communities and healthy communities? And that's, I think, what we wrote our grant to sort of focus on that. And we've seen a lot of success with that. And also the telling of the story and demonstrating of that. We would love more funding to be able to do that part of it, because I think it's an understudied area, public health. Yeah.
Thank you. So I hope that these conversations really helped you to dig deeper into the connection between movement building and the funds. We will take these conversations and really inform the next learning community to continue to build and integrate movement building into our work, and also learn for what this means for each of us in our roles. So I'll move into closing now. Oops. There we go. Okay. All right, so we mentioned that where our capacity building is going to be expand a little bit for folks. So just looking at our April and May, we just had our learning community today. And then we have 2 lunch and learns that are new. And so I want to share a little bit more information about that. But our office hours, hopefully you guys are attending that. That's a really great way for us to build those relationships with each other, and to troubleshoot and discuss any challenges, but also to learn from one another. And then check-ins. Your program officer will be reaching out if you need to do a check-in in the next month or so. We try to do these at the discretion of the program officer, but if you haven't checked in with your program officer recently, it's a really good opportunity to connect with them and beyond the site visits, which we have every year. So the lunch and learns. This is an opportunity to dive into foundational topics, and each session will really give a key strategy, a model for what you are trying to do. And so they focus on communications, marketing, governance, and strategic planning. So on April 22nd, we'll actually have our first one that I will be hosting. It's called Amplifying Voices Through Inclusive Decision-Making Process. I will share a model for shared decision-making. And the next ones throughout the year, we'll talk about effective program evaluation, marketing for community-based organizations who are doing their own marketing, DIY for marketing. And then we'll also talk about strategic planning and succession planning later on in the year. And then we'll have another evaluation focused one on building relationships with targeted communities. So how do you have meaningful engagement with specific communities that you're trying to reach. And then we also are adding evaluation hours, but those don't start for a few months, but that's an opportunity to also drop in and have conversations about your own evaluation, planning, and theory of changes. So just to wrap up, the last thing is to please complete this brief feedback survey. We're really not getting enough input on these surveys. We should be at a higher rate of folks engaging in this. So if you have a phone right now, please take it out and go into this. It takes 5 minutes. We really want to have more participation in our surveys so that we can make sure these sessions are better. Again, the next lunch and learn is the first lunch and learn is on April 22nd, and then our next learning session is on June 5th. Okay, thank you all for your time, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.